How often do you block a punt and it lead directly to your defeat in the game? Unbelievable, but totally believable for the Cowboys this year. We've got NBA news today. Could a Jimmy Butler trade be on the horizon? And we've got the Heisman finalists and a late push and a snap ain't a stat movement. Oh, let's go around the horn. Fluky play. Of course, Cowboys-Bengals would come down to a fluky play this year. To block a punt with 2 minutes left for it to backfire like it did. It goes past the line of scrimmage. So that's a fumble when the Cowboys touch it. A second time, recovered by Cincy, and that sets up the game winner Burrow to chase. ESPN Analytics had the Bengals' chances at making the playoffs at 1.9% going into the game. After the win, 2.9%. Not great. So looking forward for them. Do you blow it up? Do you reload? Joe Burrow was asked about it after the game. He said he thinks the team can bring back Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Frank, I saw around the horn to you. Your biggest takeaway from last night's Bengals win.
You know, I don't agree necessarily with Micah Parsons walking off the field early, but I do agree with his sentiment about it feeling like a playoff loss, because it did feel like the Cowboys season ended, and it ended with that punt where, on the one hand, the player is thinking that's a live ball, that's a fumble. Instinctively, you want to go after it, but only the Cowboys can lose like that. Maybe he didn't even know the rule. Maybe he thought it was blocked and you shouldn't touch it. Whatever the case may be, that's a brutal loss. As for Cincinnati, though, you watch how explosive that team is. How are they 5-8? I get it. Their division with Pittsburgh and Baltimore is very good, but that team with that quarterback, that wide receiver, they should be better.
David Dennis Jr. around the horn to you. Takeaway from last night.
Well, to answer Frank's question, the Cincinnati Bengals record is what there is because their defense stinks right now. And that's the problem that they have. Even though they won the game last night, it should not take that sort of botched punt and that sort of luck for them to win a game like this against a bad team when Joe Burrow is playing this close to perfect on a consistent basis. He's had 6 games of 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. This is the first one that he has won. So those 5 losses just passed Drew Brees, who had that record of 4 losses. It was an 8-year record, right? And the irony in that is that Joe Burrow and this Cincinnati Bengals team actually remind me of that Drew Brees Saints, where Brees was putting up record-breaking yards and that defense was shooting him in the foot every single time. This team has to figure out how to shore up that defense, or Joe Burrow is just accumulating stats and a whole lot of losses.
George Dano around the horn to you on the takeaway since he's win.
Well, Tony, the only way to fix that defense, and he's right, it is stinky for sure, is by making shrewd moves. If you're going to be that heavy on offense in regards to where you allocate your salary cap to and try to remedy that defense that David was alluding to, you've got to be good on the waiver wire. You've got to be good drafting. You've got to be good in free agency at finding guys in the margins. And I don't know if the Bengals are equipped to do those things necessarily, because there's this notion out there they could just trade Chase or even T. Higgins and remedy that. I don't know if I buy that they're capable of doing what Kansas City did, because Kansas City already had the makings of a good defense at that point. And in regards to the Cowboys, real quick, Mike McCarthy said in the postgame that the young man knew the rule and that he heard the roar of the crowd and just reacted to the football in front of him. Maybe he thought someone else had already touched it, perhaps. I felt like that's what McCarthy was alluding to at that point.
Marcel Louis-Jacques on the Bengals win or the Cowboys loss?
Tony, a stat that helps you, that helps prove the point in the Bengals breaking comprehension with this season. They have the league's leader in passing yards, receiving yards, and sacks. No team in NFL history has ever done that. And after this, no team in NFL history has ever done that and still had a losing record. It's incredible. To their credit, like, they have tried to spend on defense. They went and got Trey Hendrickson. That's worked out great. They went and got a DJ Reader. But Burrow's comments after the game really stood out to me. I'm supposed to all of a sudden believe they're going to shell out $65+ million on 2 wide receivers after the season that they've had. If anything, this front office is going to say, wow, like, we have this explosive offense and we are still losing games. So why are we going to break the bank on receivers? I don't see it. They signed Chase, but T. Higgins is gone, man.
We've been horned. We'll be gone. Moving on to the next story is a story we did last week. that a panel that looked an awful lot like this panel said they don't believe it at all. But here we are a week later, Belichick and UNC. Since we did that story, another meeting between the two reportedly lasted 5 hours on Sunday. And then here's Belichick on McAfee yesterday.
Let me put this in capital letters. If.
Yeah.
If I was in a college program, the college program would be a pipeline to the NFL for the players that had the ability to play in the NFL. It would be a professional program, training, nutrition, scheme, coaching, techniques that would transfer to the NFL. It will be an NFL program at a college level.
So Belichick not mentioning North Carolina by name in any way there, but a source telling ESPN some type of resolution between UNC and Belichick expected this week. To add on that, news of the afternoon, WRAL, that's NBC Raleigh, reporting that an offer, in fact, has been made by the school. That still would have to go through boards and all these sorts of things, but an offer reportedly made. George, on Belichick and UNC, what, if anything, makes sense right now?
All right, Tony, there's a lot to unwrap here. Okay, let's start with the Belichick aspect of this. This is all in favor of Bill Belichick in the sense of he's getting all the opportunity to speak about this job. I don't think North Carolina reaps any of the benefits here, even if he does land the job, and I'll get to that in a second. But if you look at Bill Belichick right now, what does he want to be? To be known by far with a bullet as the greatest coach in the history of the NFL. He needs that Don Shula record, I think, to cement that particular case. He's got all the Super Bowls, I get it. But if he gets that record, he's got it with a bullet. There isn't even a debate at that point. He's not getting that if the 72-year-old Bill Belichick goes to North Carolina. Now, let's start with North Carolina here. This is a battle, since Mack Brown was dismissed, between a member of their board of trustees who does not like the way the athletic director, Bubba Cunningham, has handled football particularly, okay? That has been reported. That is also what I've heard as well. And what I would add to that is this. This particular board of trustee member has been spearheading this Belichick conversation, and now here we are when it comes to this. Let's also add that North Carolina is way behind on NIL, despite Bill Belichick's 400-page manifesto, according to the internet, that he allegedly handed over to the University of North Carolina, that he would need every single thing, every I and T crossed for him to accept the job. Like, this to me makes no sense on a number of levels, including North Carolina going into a new world of college football with a 72-year-old coach who may take the first NFL job available to him, and then you get stuck with his son.
Other than that, Mr. Zidano, how did you like the report? David Dennis Jr., around the horn to you on, do you still believe there's nothing here, or is this turning? Could this happen?
Retweet George Sedano. I just don't see it. I don't see how this is beneficial for any of the groups that are involved here. I don't see how UNC benefits from a 72-year-old coach who does not know about the NIL system, who has a shaky record of building his own roster, who doesn't want to listen to certain people, who wants to run his own show running that organization. I don't know what Bill Belichick gains from taking a step back to what may be his final coaching position of his career with really no pathway into the NFL. His closest pathway to the NFL is just waiting for a team who gets rid of a coach and is desperate enough to kick the tires on Belichick, which almost happened last year with the Atlanta Falcons. This makes no sense. I don't care how far this goes, and in the spirit of Jackie McMullen, you can dock 501 points if Bill Belichick is on a sideline for UNC anytime in the near future.
Okay. First, let's get to Frank Isola. I want to get to a lot of what you just said. Frank Isola, you're shaking your head no while George and David were giving their perspective on this. Please.
Shocking.
Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah. Only people related to Don Shula and about 12 people in Florida believe that Don Shula is a better coach than Bill Belichick. Give me a break. And I love how, well, all right, he has the Super Bowls. Oh, really? Let's just dismiss all the Super Bowls he has. Meanwhile, for David, for being the big man on campus and the guy with all the power, welcome to college sports. That's all the big-name college football coaches in basketball do. They're bigger than the president at the school. It makes all the sense in the world for him to be there. He wants to coach college football. He made his bones with the New York Giants. Guess who he coached there? Lawrence Taylor, the greatest defensive player in history. Where did he go to school? The place that Bill Belichick will be coaching at. He'll be great there. You want to go to the pros? You go play for Bill Belichick. And by the way, gentlemen, 72 years old is not 102. Slow down on how he's 72 years old. That ain't that old. Come on now.
And Marcel Louis-Jacques. Where do you come down on this? This is getting spicy.
I'm still trying to find the correlation between Lawrence Taylor and Bill Belichick taking this job at UNC. I think that's kind of a reach, right? But all right, so let's just pretend that he is going there. He made a comment that the modern college football is run more like the NFL, except these are not grown men. They are 18-year-olds, millionaires. Are you really prepared to deal with that ego, that attitude, the drop of a hat? These kids, if they're not playing in year one, they're transferring. You don't have a 3-year contract with these guys. And it's not like you're going to throw your own money into the ring. UNC still has to provide that NIL fund. So I don't think, look, I want to respect it when people do something new and go find a new frontier. It's cool to kind of think about, but when you actually get away from the dream and wake up into reality, no, it doesn't make any sense.
George Sedano back in.
Tony, first of all, forget Don Shula. This has nothing to do with Don Shula. This has to do with Bill Belichick. They just fired a 73-year-old Mac Brown because they felt the game passed him by. This is a game he doesn't even understand, and it's constantly changing. To Marcel's point, there are no contracts. Lane Kiffin or some SEC school can go in there and say, oh, you know what? You're mad about your playing time? You look good in that Carolina blue, but you look better in our uniform. He's going to have to deal with that. Good luck. There's no chance that if he does take the job, he's going to handle that.
Yeah. Let's go back to September. Dabo Swinney, he doesn't understand today's college football. He didn't get any players in the transfer portal. He'll be in a playoff game this weekend.
Frank,
the man
his talent
knows
evaluation
football.
stinks.
If your argument is he doesn't know what he's doing, you need to get a better argument. The guy's a football genius.
Oh, really?
Come on, folks. Stop.
You don't even understand what college football is about and what it's doing moving forward. Frank, in September, he said Drake May. He said Drake May wouldn't be a quarterback that was ready to play in the NFL. He's not even a good talent evaluator right now.
Okay.
Oh, you're right. He's terrible. Terrible. You're right.
We're not going to get to the bottom of this. One thing I don't want to get lost in this, that David Dennis Jr. just walked himself into a guarantee that could be 501 points going the other way. I appreciate that, David. All right, Frank, you think there's something here? Well, we'll see what happens as the story develops. We're taking a break right here. Fire until next. NBA Cup quarterfinals tonight. Magic Bucks, Mavericks Thunder. But our NBA story of the day is in Shams Charania's inside pass. League sources telling him that the Miami Heat are open to listening to offers for Jimmy Butler. And Butler's agent indicating he'd be open to playing for win-now teams, including Mavericks, Warriors, Rockets. George, buy or sell the Heat trading Butler? And who you buying that's in play for Butler?
Tone, I think that I'm buying it because it's run its course. Jimmy obviously has had a good run there in Miami, 2 finals appearances. But I would look at the Warriors, okay? The Heat obviously need kind of to reboot a little bit. Their best players besides Jimmy are in their mid-20s. You got a guy like Kuminga, who would be a prize piece. With the Warriors, I feel like have been inclined to kind of move potentially at times. And, you got to make the money work, so maybe an Andrew Wiggins. You probably need a third team. But the Warriors need to look at their roster and say, are we championship ready? I doubt they look at it that way. A guy like Jimmy could propel them.
Well, you see that this is where it's going for Miami. They will deal Jimmy Butler by the trade deadline this year.
I believe so,
David Dennis Jr., how about you?
I think they're going to deal Jimmy Butler, and in theory, him and the Warriors make a lot of sense. Pairing him with Steph and Draymond makes sense. What's going to be in the margins is going to be the problem here. I don't know if the Warriors want to get rid of Kuminga and Wiggins for somebody like Jimmy Butler, but they do have a lot of roster spots. I think that this is something they're looking for. They're looking for that second star to pair with Steph.
Marcel Louis-Jacques.
I think we saw the Heat's ceiling when they overachieved a couple years ago to make the NBA Finals. A couple of those role players that helped them overachieve are now in other markets. It's about that time, especially with Tyler Hero really emerging as a star. I like Houston. I'm going to zig here. I like Houston. Third in the Western Conference right now. Young team. Ime Udoka is starting to change that franchise around. I'm going to take a chance on a guy who knows how to win late in the year. That was
a name that I flagged when I saw the report. Wow, Houston's going to win now. Frank Isola, how do you read it?
Yeah, for me, they're too young to get a player like that who sometimes could be a headache, misses a lot of games. Look how well it's working out with Paul George in Philadelphia. I'm not going down that road. The beginning of the end was after the season when the still going strong 79-year-old Pat Riley said Jimmy Butler needs to talk less. That's when you knew it was over. I'm not talking.
79? Well, 79 isn't 109.
79. Right, yeah, exactly.
Jimmy Butler will be traded by the trade deadline, Frank?
I do believe it doesn't make any sense to bring him back after the season under a big contract.
Buy or sell two. Heisman finalists: Travis Hunter, Ashton Jeanty, Cam Moore, Dylan Gabriel. Here are the odds. Could it really be that open and shut for Hunter? The hype for Hunter and his two-way singularity versus Jeanty in the top 4, could be 3, could be 2, could be the number 1 rushing season of all time. In the last week, there's also been snaps are not a stat movement we've seen pop up. David, who you buying?
All of that is cute. Hunter, open and shut case. We've never seen anything like this. He leads the Power 4 in touchdowns. He's 3rd in yards. He's 4th amongst corners in the Power 4 in interceptions. This is just uncharted territory. Reward the best player in college football for being the best player in college football.
Marcel Louis-Jacques, is it open and shut?
Absolutely, close the book. We have never seen anybody like this. He is the best two-way player we've seen in college football, and that includes his coach, Deion Sanders, and his durability deserves credit as well. But I have to say this too, Tony. Cam Scatterbull can't get an invitation? I'm not saying he's the Heisman winner, but he can't get into the
out,
man. Let's fly you out to New York.
Frank Isola, how about you?
Yeah, if Jeanty played at Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, I think he'd be a much stronger candidate. I mean, what a player he is.
He's in the playoff right now.
It's a bigger conference, so bigger school. I think the voters take the bigger schools more seriously. But good job by Deion. When he took time off from promoting himself, he actually did a good job promoting Hunter, who I think is going to win it.
George Sedano, is it a clean sweep here and an open and shut case for Hunter?
Yeah. Yeah, Tone, we've seen a lot of two-way players in college football. We've never seen one have the impact on both sides of the ball that he's had. He could be I think he's an incredible cornerback. I think he's the best cornerback we've seen in a long time. And receiver, he'd be in the conversation,
I hear you guys. I'm shocked this is a clean sweep. We've seen a lot of two-way play. We haven't seen that many because it wasn't really allowed for. Let's be honest with that. It wasn't like it. But we've seen 12,000 running backs since they started running the football 100 years ago, and only 3 are ahead of him in yards right now. So number 1 all-time in yards, which is where he may end up, this is not even, it's just a write him off. He can't win the Heisman.
It's just a bad year. He's going against a unicorn, Tony. He's going against a unicorn. Any other year
first all-time in rushing, first all-time in touchdowns this season versus 6th in receiving and 23rd in interceptions. And we'll move on. Buy or sell 3. Time Magazine Athlete of the Year. Caitlin Clark. Frank Isola, buy or sell?
I'm buying it all the way. No one else should have gotten this award. The impact she had both in college and in the WNBA. She should have been on the Olympic team. And I think maybe now the players will understand. It's the golden goose. Stop taking shots. Don't kill the golden goose.
Marcel Louis-Jacques.
I'm buying it, but I'm selling the Olympic thing. Even Caitlin Clark said she's okay with her exclusion from the roster because she didn't want to be there just to grow the game. She wants that invite when she is ready to compete and when the team thinks she's ready to compete. So I love that maturity from her.
Marcel Louis-Jacques says that. David Dennis Jr., buy or sell Clark, Athlete of the Year?
I'm buying this. They reward the athletes who are not only great, but the big newsmakers, and she may be the biggest newsmaker of the past calendar year. But beyond that, I'm struck by what she said in the interview with Time Magazine. She acknowledged that, yes, she benefits from white privilege, even though she works hard. She said that Dejanay Carrington was not targeting her. She said she wasn't targeted by the league. She rebuffed a lot of things that people were saying about those players and affirmed that she was going to stand by the black women in the WNBA, which is what a lot of people have been waiting for. And that says more to her character than anything she does on the court.
George Sedano.
Tony, I would only add, everyone's already made their points. I would also add that, look, on this show, we've done a great job of talking about women's sports, particularly women's basketball, on multiple levels. Not everyone was doing that. And you know what? She brought everyone to the table. It became a conversation on every show across America, and that's because she made that happen.
David Dennis Jr.
First team All WNBA. She should have been on the Olympic team. She earned her spot.
Thank you for your time. Sedano, Louis-Jacques.
It's not international competition.
Go down next.
It's a different game.
Be a little better with how he responds to things. And they was friends before this. It's like, man, but things have changed.
Love a live hit from Chickies and Pete's. That was, of course, WIP. The Eagles defensive lineman providing a window into Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown's relationship. That they were friends and things have changed. Graham now telling ESPN he went too far in disclosing that. But George, is the off-field drama making you question the on-field viability of the first-place Eagles.
Yes, Tony, because I've seen this movie before in Philadelphia, and it ended after a Super Bowl loss with T.O. doing sit-ups in his driveway. So I've already seen this movie.
That.
By the way, shout out to Sports Radio getting that scoop and not a podcast, all right? Shout out
Chickies
to
and
Sports Radio.
Pete's as well. Shout out there. Go ahead, Marcel.
How insane was the T.O. McNabb beef? The fact that, a decade or so later, it still gets dragged back up. T.O. and McNabb are trading barbs again on social media. But I think it's always ironic when guys go to the media to say things shouldn't be handled in the media. That's bad form.
That's the point I think needs to be made. Marcel, on the media, making the point about the media, and taking the FaceTime to talk about.
Future Coach of the Year, Kenny Dillingham. I mean this year, not next year or and beyond. Kenny Dillingham came out and said any ASU player who wants to transfer will not have to wait until the end of their run. They do have that Peach Bowl college football playoff coming up in a few weeks. But he can allow them to enter the portal now and remain on the team as long as they still do their job. You go to work, you go to meetings, you go to workouts. That is how it's done, man. This is a first-time head coach showing everybody how to do it. Go Devils. I've never been more proud.
There we go, and you know what that means. The Homer FaceTime, but that's allowed.
Play the music, Tony.
Forks are up here for Marcel Louis-Jacques. Well done, my friend.
Forks up.
On the season, so it's been great. On a 23.5-hour break, let's see if I can get it all.